A wounded Russian commander has reportedly been found alive near Pokrovsk after crawling for 6 days across a battlefield, surviving only on apples and tree bark because his own unit abandoned him. The soldier is Vladimir Valerievich Dulyaninov of Russia's 6th Guards Tank Regiment, and his survival has exposed what many analysts and investigators now say is the single clearest example of how the Kremlin treats its own troops in one of the deadliest battles of the war. What happened to him is not a rare failure. It is part of a wider, systematic pattern of abandonment, corruption, and lethal mismanagement that has defined Russia's push for Pokrovsk. The story that led to those 6 days of crawling began long before Ukrainian forces shattered his unit's assault. According to Dulyaninov, the earliest warning sign came before the battle even started. He says he was ordered to shoot 5 of his own soldiers because they refused to take part in the attack. He refused to perform the execution and convinced the men to join his unit instead. At the time, he believed he had spared their lives. But, as he would soon discover, the battlefield Russia sent them into offered little more than a delayed death sentence. Focus Online, the German outlet that published his testimony on November 15th, reports that the 6th Guards Tank Regiment was sent into the Pokrovsk direction with almost none of the equipment it needed. Despite the regiment's name, tank support was absent. Supplies were so limited that soldiers entered one of Ukraine's most fortified sectors, carrying little more than ammunition and a handful of rations. Routes of advance were poorly chosen and dangerously exposed. Ukrainian forces detected and struck the unit almost immediately. Shrapnel tore through Dulyaninov's body, and a leg injury made it physically impossible for him to stand. Under any effective military structure, a wounded soldier would be evacuated rapidly. But Dulyaninov's unit never attempted to extract him. No medics arrived. No rescue effort was coordinated. He and several of his comrades were simply left on the ground. Faced with death, they began to crawl. Pokrovsk's landscape, scarred by artillery craters, burned vehicles, and shattered buildings, became a gauntlet they had to drag themselves across inch by inch. Starvation struck quickly. Dulyaninov's description captures how desperate the situation became. "There's no damn food or drink here. We're just chewing apples. Before that, I was eating bark. The supplies here are awful." His experience reflects what Russian soldiers across multiple fronts have been reporting for more than 2 years. Supply chains are inconsistent, poorly planned, and regularly disrupted by corruption or incompetence. Soldiers have repeatedly stated that they often receive only canned meat, grains, and cigarettes, with nothing else provided. On September 19th, the Kyiv Post published an intercepted call in which a Russian soldier complained, "Gas canisters are not issued. The rest we have to buy with our own money." Many families inside Russia have resorted to sending equipment directly to their relatives at the front, because official channels fail to deliver basics like gloves, stoves, boots, and medical kits. In more extreme cases, soldiers have reported starving for days. In April, the Express published evidence from Ukraine's military intelligence agency showing that some Russian units had begun eating stray animals. One intercepted call featured a woman explaining, "They've been sitting in a dugout for 2 weeks. The food ran out. They ate whatever they had." Another call released by Ukraine's security service recorded a soldier admitting, "We eat dogs. There's no food. Today we ate a Yorkie, a Yorkshire Terrier." Against that larger pattern, Dulyaninov's 6-day crawl fits cleanly into the conditions other soldiers have described. But what happened when he finally reached what should have been safety is perhaps even more revealing. After dragging himself across scorched, mined terrain, he reached a position manned by Russia's 24th Brigade. He believed he had reached friendly lines. Instead, he learned that his absence had already been recorded as a loss, and no evacuation attempt had ever been planned. His unit had written him off, no search party had been sent, no one had looked for him. "The wounded aren't evacuated, they're just left to die," he told Focus Online. Independent investigations confirm that this is not an isolated problem, but a systemic failure. In July 2024, Medusa published a report quoting Russian military doctors who admitted that emergency battlefield care was impossible to implement under current conditions. They noted that many wounded soldiers who might have survived with basic medical support died because they were never reached in time. British intelligence later concluded that Russia's lack of armoured medical evacuation vehicles and the persistent threat of Ukrainian drones meant that significant delays in evacuation were the norm. The delays, the report said, almost certainly increased mortality among the wounded. The numbers reflect these failures. Politico reported in October that Russia's killed-to-wounded ratio had collapsed to 1 dead soldier for every 1.3 wounded. This is an extraordinarily poor ratio by modern military standards. It suggests that a shockingly large proportion of Russia's wounded die before they ever reach treatment. SEPA wrote in June 2025 that Russia's leadership often compensates for the lack of medical care by pushing wounded soldiers back into combat before they have healed. Citing Russian Academy of Sciences, head Gennady Krasnikov's claim that 98% of wounded Russian troops returned to the battlefield. SEPA noted that this was achieved not by superior medical care, but by sending injured men back to the front prematurely. Dulyaninov's testimony includes descriptions of corruption that mirror what other soldiers have revealed. He says that troops are required to pay between 150,000 and 200,000 rubles, between $1,840 and $2,460, to a so-called company fund. The payments are labeled voluntary but function as mandatory contributions. Soldiers rarely know who controls the money or how it is used. He claims that soldiers who attempt to expose corruption or disobey unlawful orders have been killed. Investigations by outlets such as The Guardian support this claim. On October 30th, The Guardian reported that the independent outlet Verstkar documented at least 150 cases in which Russian commanders executed their own soldiers for refusing to fight, attempting to retreat, or questioning orders. Testimonies described soldiers being beaten in pits, doused with water in freezing temperatures, and, in some cases, forced into hand-to-hand fights to the death. On October 17th, The Telegraph reported that soldiers had been handcuffed to trees and left without food or water as punishment. All these accounts point to a doctrine in which Russian soldiers are treated as expendable. This approach recalls the Battle of Bakhmut, where Russia used wave after wave of poorly equipped infantry to grind forward at an enormous human cost. By March 2023, The Guardian reported that Russia had lost up to 30,000 soldiers in Bakhmut. Reuters later reported in June 2023 that analysts believed the eventual figure may have reached nearly 100,000. Pokrovsk is now surpassing those numbers. Former Forbes columnist David Axe wrote that Russia lost 100,000 soldiers in the Pokrovsk direction between January and October 2025 alone. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reported that Russia lost 25,000 soldiers in October 2025, most in that same direction. This places the confirmed and estimated Russian losses connected to Pokrovsk at roughly 125,000 in 2025, and the battle is ongoing with no indication that the casualty rate is slowing. Similar conditions are visible on other fronts. On October 23rd, The Independent reported that Russian soldiers on the Dnipro River Delta were trapped in what it described as a death zone, where Ukrainian drones controlled the airspace and prevented resupply. Soldiers were forced to drink dirty river water and survive in flooded trenches. Since January, 5,100 soldiers have died in that area alone, including many from starvation or exposure rather than direct combat. Pokrovsk holds strategic importance because it sits on key transportation routes that, if captured, would allow Russia deeper access into Ukrainian territory. But the cost of the deal suggests the Kremlin is sacrificing manpower faster than it can replace it. Recruitment shortfalls, falling morale, and an overwhelmed medical system are combining to create an unsustainable trajectory. Dulyaninov's own words sum up the atmosphere surrounding the battle. "This is even worse than Bakhmut. It feels like everyone has been sent to their deaths. It's total crap," he said. "Young guys, damn it, they're dying here, one after the other. It's Get up!" His testimony mirrors that of other Russian soldiers, including Mikhail Simdyankin, profiled by the Wall Street Journal. After being wounded, Simdyankin was ordered into a suicidal assault. "Our commanders saw us as expendable," he said. "They didn't care whether or not we survived." The reality revealed by these testimonies and investigations is consistent. Russia is abandoning its wounded, starving its units, recycling injured soldiers into battle, executing those who resist, and losing manpower on a scale that no modern military can sustain indefinitely. Pokrovsk is exposing this system more clearly than any battle since the war began. Not because the system has changed, but because the losses are now too large to hide. The question now is how long Russia can continue attacking Pokrovsk while suffering casualties at this scale, and what breaking point lies ahead for an army that treats survival as optional and evacuation as unnecessary.